We live in a time where anything goes as long as it feels good. We're told that masturbation is normal, harmless, a natural part of being human. In fact, if you dare question it, you're often labeled as repressed, judgmental, or simply ignorant of the science. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one talks about. How much is too much? At what point does a normal habit quietly become an obsession, one that hijacks your brain, sabotages your discipline, and rewires your deepest desires? Let's face it, what happens when you can't stop? When the urge hits you in the middle of work, study, prayer, or rest, and you find yourself giving in yet again, not out of joy, not even out of desire, but out of compulsion. If you've ever felt that guilt, that moment of emptiness after a release, the sluggish fog that follows the high, you're not alone. And it's time we talk about what's really going on. Before we go any further, let me say this. Yes, I used an exaggerated title and thumbnail not to mislead you, but to wake you up. Because the truth is, we are facing a modern epidemic. It's silent, invisible, and socially accepted, even encouraged. But behind closed doors, in dark rooms, in the silence of loneliness and regret, it's wrecking lives. Slowly, quietly, devastatingly. This video isn't about shame. It's about truth. It's about reclaiming power over your life, your mind, and your future. In the next few pages, we're going to break this down scientifically, philosophically, and personally. We'll talk about what masturbation actually does to your brain, how dopamine, the pleasure chemical, isn't just rewarding you, but rewiring you. We'll explore how this habit affects your motivation, your relationships, your sleep, your willpower. And most importantly, we'll look at how Stoic philosophy, ancient wisdom, forged in hardship and clarity, offers a powerful blueprint for overcoming this modern trap. So, if you've ever wondered why your focus is fading, why your goals feel distant, why you keep procrastinating, or why you feel like you're not living up to your potential, it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it's time to do something about it. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on the bell, because today we start a conversation that could change your life, not with guilt, not with fear, but with knowledge, awareness, and the unshakable strength that comes from within. Let's begin. When we chase pleasure blindly, something begins to shift deep within the architecture of the brain. At first, masturbation offers a powerful release, a rush of dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical. You feel lighter, calmer, even content, but the brain, intelligent yet primal, doesn't rest. It remembers that surge, and like a child demanding more candy, it starts to crave that same intensity again. But here's the catch: your brain adapts. That initial hit of dopamine starts to lose its magic. The same act, repeated over and over, doesn't deliver the same satisfaction. So what does the brain do? It demands more intensity, more frequency, more stimulation. The result, a downward spiral into compulsion. And when the flood of dopamine becomes excessive, your brain begins a silent rebellion. It shuts down some of its dopamine receptors, not to punish you, but to protect itself. Now you're stuck in a vicious loop, chasing a pleasure that no longer satisfies, performing an act that once comforted you, only to be met with emptiness, frustration, and eventually, self-loathing. This isn't just about biology anymore. This is about bondage. The behavior becomes eerily similar to the smoker who lights up even when his lungs scream in pain, to the sugar addict devouring chocolate until nausea takes over, to the alcoholic who drinks not for celebration, but to escape the silence in his own mind. What starts as pleasure ends as prison. But here's where the wisdom of the ancient world cuts through the chaos of our modern dilemma. Enter the Stoics, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. Men who didn't speak from theory, but from hardship, war, exile, and power. They understood the pull of passion. They lived in a world of indulgence, Roman feasts, wine, slaves, and carnal freedom. But they also understood this: if a man cannot rule himself, he is not free. To the Stoics, masturbation wasn't merely a physical act, it was a mirror. A moment that revealed whether you were in control or if your desires were. The body, they taught, is not our enemy, but neither is it our master. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Epictetus, born a slave and later a philosopher, went further. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Pleasure in Stoicism is not evil, but it is dangerous when it becomes the compass of your life. The true test of character is not found in resisting pleasure forever, but in being able to walk away from it, even when every cell in your body screams for it. They weren't advocating for repression. They were offering something greater: self-awareness, the ability to examine your emotions, understand your urges, and respond, not react. To master your inner world so that the outer one holds no power over you. When you give in to urges without thought, without restraint, you break that sacred balance. The Stoics cherished a harmony with nature, with reason, with purpose. You become a slave to sensation, and the deeper parts of your soul begin to erode under the weight of guilt, shame, and lost potential. I want to share a personal story. Someone I know once lived in that storm, caught in a cycle of compulsive masturbation. They sought momentary comfort in an act that eventually left them emptier than before. The high was brief, but the crash lasted hours, sometimes days. Then came Stoicism, not as a religion, not as a strict rule book, but as a guide to sanity. They began reading Seneca's letters, journaling their thoughts like Marcus did, sitting quietly with their cravings instead of acting on them. Slowly, something changed. They stopped running from the urge. They began studying it, understanding it, mastering it. And in that mastery, they discovered peace. Today, they no longer chase momentary highs. They live with intention, with clarity, with a strength that's not loud but unshakable. This transformation is possible for anyone. For you, you are not your cravings. You are the one who notices them, and the one who decides what comes next. Desire whispers promises it cannot keep. It tells us just one more time, one more release, one more escape, one more stolen moment of pleasure, and you'll feel whole again. But what desire gives with one hand, it takes away with the other. You may feel the temporary warmth of satisfaction, but it fades often within. Minutes leaving behind only the cold echo of regret. True satisfaction, as the Stoics remind us, does not come from surrendering to every fleeting impulse. It comes from living in alignment with our deepest principles and values, the unshakable parts of ourselves that stand firm even when the winds of temptation howl. When we habitually yield to desires that bring no lasting joy, we betray our noblest purposes. We begin to drift, often without realizing it, away from the quiet but powerful sources of real happiness: virtue, clarity, self-respect, and peace. Compulsive masturbation may seem like a harmless indulgence, but over time, it pulls us off course, away from discipline, from inner harmony, from the meaningful work that gives our lives depth. It is not just the act itself that damages us, but the way it distances us from ourselves. It clouds our mind, weakens our resolve, and fragments our attention. It seduces us into living for moments rather than meaning. The Stoics were crystal clear. Happiness is not found in what we chase, but in how we live. Marcus Aurelius warned us not to be slave to our passions, and instead to seek tranquility of the soul a stillness that comes only when our thoughts, actions, and values are in harmony. To cultivate this inner harmony, we must train the mind just as a warrior trains for battle. Mindfulness and meditation are not trendy modern tools. They are ancient practices rooted in Stoic discipline. Seneca often reflected quietly on his day, analyzing each emotion, each decision, not to judge himself harshly, but to understand. He practiced what today we would call mental hygiene, cleansing the mind of unnecessary disturbances by observing them with calm detachment. You too can practice this. When the urge arises, don't fight it with violence or guilt. Instead, watch it, sit with it, name it. Say to yourself, "Ah, there you are again." The urge may feel overwhelming, but remember, you are not the urge. You are the observer, and the observer holds the power. By regularly practicing this kind of conscious awareness, you begin to create a space between impulse and action. That space is sacred. It is where choice lives. It is where freedom begins. Every time you resist the call of temporary pleasure in favor of a greater principle, you build inner strength. You train your soul. You reclaim your life. The journey is not always easy. There will be moments of relapse, moments of weakness, moments where your emotions threaten to overwhelm your reason. But even in those moments, there is something sacred at play. For every fall is an opportunity to rise with greater awareness. In truth, compulsive behavior of any kind is not just a habit, it's a symptom, a signal. It tells us that something inside is misaligned, that we are hungry, not for pleasure, but for peace, not for stimulation, but for stillness. And here's the great paradox. The more you chase pleasure, the less you feel it. But the more you pursue peace, the more deeply you feel alive. Let go of the illusion that your joy lies in the next release. Your joy lives in the quiet center of your being, where virtue dwells. It is waiting for you beyond the noise, beyond the craving, in the stillness of self-mastery. Recovery begins not with grand declarations, but with quiet decisions, small, consistent choices that rebuild the self piece by piece. If you've ever felt trapped in this cycle of craving, release, regret, you are not broken. You are human, but the path out is not in more hiding or shaming. It's in awakening. It's in facing the truth with courage, that you deserve better than the life of a slave to impulse. And that better life begins when you choose to reclaim your will. The Stoics teach us that our power lies not in controlling the world, but in governing ourselves. This means taking responsibility for our mind, our body, and our actions, not with harshness, but with compassionate discipline. It means recognizing that the person you are becoming is being shaped by what you choose to do when no one is watching. So, what does it look like practically to begin this rebirth? It starts with awareness. Start journaling not just your victories, but your struggles. Write down what you feel when the urge arises. Is it boredom, loneliness, stress, lust? Find the root, because the urge is often a mask. Beneath it is something deeper, some wound or need that is crying out to be heard. Meet it with honesty. Next, build structure. Discipline doesn't mean rigidity, it means clarity. Create a routine that prioritizes your highest values. Read books that stir your soul, move your body, create something, have real conversations. The more you fill your life with meaning, the less room there is for meaningless escapes. And finally, practice forgiveness. This journey is not linear. There will be setbacks. You might slip. But the Stoics remind us what matters most is how you respond. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Let each new day be a beginning, a clean slate. You are not defined by the cravings you resist or give into. You are defined by the strength with which you rise every time you fall." Imagine the version of yourself who no longer needs to run to false pleasures, who looks in the mirror and sees peace instead of shame, who walks through the world with a quiet dignity, no longer chained to urges, but driven by purpose. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is the real you, buried beneath layers of habit and pain. And every act of discipline, every moment of self-control is not a punishment, it's a path back to yourself. The Stoics didn't promise an easy life, but they promised a life worth living. One built on truth, on virtue, on inner strength. You don't have to be perfect to begin. You just have to be willing. The first step: stop chasing comfort. Start seeking clarity. Let go of what feels good for a moment and reach for what feels right forever. Because in the end, it's not about never falling. It's about always rising, wiser than before. There comes a moment in every person's journey where they must stand before themselves and ask a terrifying question: am I truly free or just comfortable in my chains? Most people never ask this. They move through life on autopilot, tied to urges they pretend not to see, running from silence, numbing themselves with stimulation. But the Stoics taught us that true freedom is not the absence of restriction, it is mastery over desire. Because when you can say no to your strongest craving, not out of fear, but out of wisdom, you begin to taste a level of power that no fleeting pleasure can offer. Compulsive masturbation is not about lust alone. It's a symbol, a red flag, a signal that your inner world is off balance, that you are trying to fill a spiritual void with a physical act. And no matter how many times you give in, that void will not close, because what you truly hunger for is not pleasure, it's purpose. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So what color is your mind stained with? Lust, regret, shame, emptiness, or is it tinted with clarity, discipline, and peace? Understand this: your brain is plastic. It adapts. Right now, your pathways are wired for quick reward and instant dopamine. But you can rewire. You can train your mind to crave peace more than porn, stillness more than stimulation, creation more than consumption. How? Through exposure to discomfort. That's where your power is reborn. Every time you feel the urge and don't act on it, you weaken the chain. You reclaim territory from the addiction. You reassert dominance over your own body. You're not suppressing the urge. You're confronting it, watching it rise, watching it pass, and proving to yourself, I am not my impulses. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Let your struggle be your proving ground. The world is full of people who are slaves to their phones, to their lust, to their comforts. You, on the other hand, are here for something more. Not to indulge your lower self, but to rise into the higher. Oh no, to reclaim your manhood or your humanity, not through denial, but through understanding, through will. Every time you deny the urge, you are choosing long-term dignity over short-term escape. You are proving to yourself that your soul is stronger than your animal mind. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. Every relapse is not the end, it's a lesson. Get up, reflect, adjust, keep moving. You are not weak because you struggle. You are strong because you are fighting. And one day, perhaps soon, you will realize that you no longer want to go back, that the clarity of a calm mind, the strength of your self-control, the confidence in your eyes is worth infinitely more than the emptiness left after indulgence. That's when you'll know you've won, not against your body, but for your soul.